me your full name
Gerald T. Newman,
and your birth date.
January 24th, 1927. Yeah.
Okay. Where were you born?
I was born in Ozark, Alabama, in Grace Hospital.
Okay. And did you grow up there
We
pretty much?
When I was about 3 years old, we moved out to the country, out to Echo, Alabama, and at the crossroads, about 15 miles out from Ozark.
Okay.
And my dad had a sawmill, and that's where the timber was.
Yeah. And so, tell me just a little bit about growing up there.
Well, Daddy, we moved out there so he'd be closer to the woods where he was sawmilling, and as best I can determine, he went bankrupt during the Depression there, right soon after we moved out there, because I remember that when my brother was born, he was 6 years younger than I. We didn't even have a vehicle. He had to hire someone to go get the midwife, and that's the only time I ever saw my dad do manual work. We had rented a house and a farm, a little farm there, and so he got out and he had an old mule left from the mill, and he got that old mule out there and planted a big garden, about an acre garden.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we ate. And then I remember one Sunday morning, the fellow who had been his sawyer, the sawyer was the one that ran the mill always. He came to see Daddy, and the sawyer told me later on that he and his brother talked Daddy into renting a mill and going back in business, and said that the three of them ran the mill. Now normally it took about 15 people to run the mill, but the three of them did the sawing the trees down and dragging them up, and whereas a mill normally would cut about 8,000 board feet a day, then they would do that about that a week.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he said, at least we were making $2 or $3 a week, and he said that fed us. He said we were better off than most people.
That's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, yeah. So I might tell you that not long after that, there's a farm over there. There was 1,000 acres that. Oh, by the way, back then, most of the farmers had borrowed money during the Depression from the Federal Land Bank, and so the Federal Land Bank just owned many farms all over Alabama, and one of them was what they call the old Missy Mathis place. It was 1,000 acres, and the government contracted with 4 sawmills to go in there and cut the property, to cut the timber. And it was old timber that had never been harvested before. Mm-hmm. And so while they were in there, Daddy made friends apparently with the guy that was handling it for the government. And so when it was over with, they had cut all the timber. He asked Daddy, said, "Why don't you buy this place?" And Daddy said, "I don't have any money." And he said, "Well, bring us some when you get it." And Daddy bought that farm for that 1,000 acres for $2,000, and I have a copy of the deed in my file in there.
Yeah.
But the government just needed to get rid of it, so he got a bargain. And later on, we moved there in 1936, and he built a house there. And that's by that time I was 10, 11 years old, and I was driving. I remember that just before we moved there, my mother and a bunch of ladies were sitting on the front porch sewing, and by that time we had a little country store up at the crossroads, and that Daddy owned, and he had another fellow running it for him. Mm-hmm. And my dad was the only one in the whole community that had any education, and, he was a leader in the community. And, mother said, I need some white thread, would you get in the car, Gerald, and go up and get me a spool of white thread? And so the store was a mile up the road, and I got in the car and went at age 10 and drove up there and got a spool of thread, brought back and gave it to her. And the thought occurred to me, now I'm 10 years old and I've had the car off by myself. But kids, we all worked, and you know, there wasn't much playing going on. It was all work. You just had to do it in order to make a living, you know. Yeah. So then a couple of years later, Daddy built the house over there, and we moved over to that farm. And yeah. So he was a thinker, and he and I didn't get along very well, but all he ever did to me was tell me what to do, work to do. But I enjoyed it. He allowed me to do a lot of things. By that time, I was driving the farm tractor, and my off time, I was doing all kinds of farm work, plowing and so whatever was necessary. And so I grew up knowing what hard work was about.
Yeah. Did you have any other siblings besides the younger brother?
I had a sister and a brother. My sister was 2 years younger than I.
Okay.
And this lady inherited all her genes. My sister was a doer. She did whatever she wanted to do, and whether it was a man's work or lady's work, she could do it. I remember one Saturday morning, I was up at the store, and we usually had 2 or 3 vehicles by that time sitting around the car, sitting around the house, but she needed something from the store, and she looked out, and the only thing left was one of the log trucks out there with about a half load of lumber on it. And I heard our truck coming up the hill. There was a little hill coming up to the store, and she was getting the gears just like a truck driver. That was the only thing left to drive, and she had to come to the store. And this lady's the same way. Yeah.